All right, we are on air. It is Thursday, May 28th, 2015, and we're going to do a quick check-in today on development tasks for Backdrop CMS. All right, as usual, we still have PHP Storm licenses for Backdrop CMS developers, so if you are already a member of the Backdrop Contrib group and would like to use PHP Storm, send an email to info@Backdrop CMS and we can send you a license key. If you are not yet a member of the Backdrop Contrib group and are working on Backdrop Contrib projects, let us know. We can help you get through that process, and we have PHP Storm licenses if you want to use it. Since last week, we've had a little bit of growth. Nate, do you want to give us an update on where we stand with our community?
Yeah, thank you. So projects, we've had one new contributor join up to the Backdrop Contrib group. Love to see those people coming in. I'm hoping that we'll get some more after the call to action and the mailer that we sent out this week. And we have 117 total projects for Backdrop CMS on the GitHub Contrib group. The area where we saw the most growth in the past week was that our maintainers have been actively going through and tagging official releases. Thank you guys so much for doing that. We really appreciate it. And we've moved up from 42 projects with official releases to 51 projects with official releases, which is just fantastic. So all of those official releases, what's happening with every time somebody cuts one of those official releases is that GitHub now synchronizes with backdropcms.org to record those projects in the project directory listing that we're working on building out over on the flagship website. So I'll just roll right over into the next topic because this is all kind of related. And that's all of those official releases that people have been cutting now finally have update status working. So if you tag a release for 1.0.0 and then later you tag a release for 1.0.1, then those updates now will automatically be distributed to all Backdrop websites out there, saying that the module needs to be updated. So it's also exciting. We deployed the update server checking for core as well. So every Backdrop site that is out there is now actively, well, everyone that has turned on update checking at least, is getting notified of the updates as they happen. It's also great because we're starting to collect usage statistics because all of those things are bound together. When a site goes to check for its updates, it also backdropcms.org of which version it's currently running, which allows us to aggregate how many Backdrop sites are out there and which versions they're running. We just turned that on Monday, so it's only been 4 days so far that we've collected statistics for, but it's been pretty exciting to see them come in and see what modules people are running and which versions of Backdrop itself they are running. So that's all really exciting. There's nowhere to actually see the project usage statistics yet because we don't have the project directory listings in place, but that is the next major item for our flagship website, making it so that you can easily find and search modules and see how many instances of each of those modules is installed and what the most popular modules are, and all of that information. Usage statistics are kind of interesting because we can see the raw data coming in, but that raw data is only aggregated on a weekly basis. So it won't be until this coming Monday that we'll actually have a full week's worth of data. And then we'll start figuring out, how many installs of various modules there are and if they're going up and down and things like that. So all very exciting. Yeah, so an item in the agenda here is that we currently know which version of core people are running, but we don't know which modules within core they're running. And to make it so that our analytics can provide us with a lot more useful information, we want to start recording which modules inside of core people actually have enabled. And actually even further than that, we also like to check other anonymous but highly useful information for us to know, like whether or not clean URLs is turned on or off or not, and what are some other examples, like just general like major things that we need to figure out, like what kind of configurations people are commonly using so that we can make some judgment calls on whether or not certain features are valuable or not. Okay, that's all I've got for update checking and community growth. You want to pick it back up, Jen?
Sure. So the next item on the agenda is Drush status. I know, let's see. We've got a couple of people working on Drush status. Doesn't look like they're here this week, but the status of things right now is that we do have a layer of abstraction in the latest version of Drush, which is Drush 7, that will allow Drush to work on things that are not Drupal. What we need to do in Backdrop itself is build in a kind of a Drush interface layer that will allow you to run commands like drush cc all, and it'll know which function in Backdrop to run. We've got a bunch of people who've been working on that. There are a couple of stumbling blocks in terms of even if we introduce our entire own compatibility layer, it might still not completely work with Drush, but we can't anticipate what those problems are going to be until we have that compatibility layer there that we're using. So we've got some people working on that, and we should have updates on that moving along, which is really fabulous. I couldn't imagine doing Drupal or Backdrop development without Drush anymore now that I've gotten used to it. So I'm really looking forward to having updates and Drush DL and all of those handy commands that we use all the time in Drush working for Backdrop too. So soon that we should get that underway. Other things we're working on, next is Backdrop's flagship website, backdropcms.org. We are obviously aggregating all of the modules that are posted on GitHub. We're trying to build a user interface so that people can actually find the module they want as well. So that involves a design task, which is getting a design of the find page, which we have and we should start implementing soon, as well as a design for the project page itself. So the module theme or layout that you've found on backdropcms.org will have all the information that you need to decide whether you're going to use it or not. And starting in just a few days, that should also contain usage statistics. So that is going to be super useful for us as well. So we're starting to get into a point where you can actually compare Backdrop to Drupal because we're starting to have all of the same infrastructure tasks done as well. So that's pretty exciting. As soon as we get our module theme layout stuff done, the next item on our list is to get a showcase built. And that's just because people keep asking, like, do you know what sites are running Backdrop? And the answer right now is no, we have no idea. And so we'd like to build a place where people can submit their own little showcases of, this is a site I've built in Backdrop, these are things that are super interesting about it, and provide companies or maybe the websites themselves a way to get a little link back so we can handle some, hand off some SEO love as well there. So let's see. Right now we have Backdrop 1.1.1 out, I think. Yeah, and we've got, let's see, that came out, looks like May 19th is in this agenda here. Our next patch release would be 1.1.2. We've got a couple of tasks left for that. We've got some issues that went into Drupal 7.36 that we want to get merged in, and some issues that went into 7.37 that we also want to get resolved for Backdrop. It looks like we're pretty close on getting those done. Other than that, we don't have any major bugs that need to be fixed, but obviously 1.1 is new, and if we come across new bugs in 1.1 that need to be solved quickly, we'll just issue a new release as those get resolved. So our next minor release is 1.2, and that is scheduled for September 15th, 2015, and we're hoping that that version will contain a built-in rich text editor. So this is right now the one thing that I think is a huge detriment to anyone who's trying to compare Backdrop to WordPress. We're like, oh, WordPress has WYSIWYG. It's also a little bit of a detriment for people who are comparing Backdrop against Drupal 8. Yes, Backdrop is out and Drupal 8 isn't, but Drupal 8 has a rich text editor and Backdrop doesn't. So if we could get on par with getting that in, that would be fabulous. And I think that is our next super high priority item for Backdrop. In addition to getting the rich text editor in, which is likely to be super hard and complicated, we've added a bunch of easier tasks to our list too, and that will be taking fields that offer different field types into core. So getting modules like date and link and email, things that are really commonly used, moved into core, will also be helping us compare modules that are in core with modules that Drupal 8 has in core, introducing basic functionality that applies to the masses of sites that are using Drupal. Merged into core means less having to search for contrib and put them in. Most of these modules already have ports to Backdrop, which is fantastic, which means that all we need to do is do a thorough review of that port, make sure that all the tests are still passing, and then see what does that module look like if it were in core. Does it need a rewrite, or is it fine to just put it in? Because we're in the 1.1 cycle, we will likely not be doing a major rewrite. We might be doing a little cleanup here and there of code, but for the most part, we want your current Backdrop sites, if you're running 1.1 right now, to be able to upgrade smoothly from 1.1 to 1.2, and that means we'll change as little as possible in order to get that in. So the modules on our list right now are date field, link field, and email field. But if we end up having other field modules that are in high demand and we want to put those into, we can also look at adding those. But our priority for 1.2 is, of course, the rich text editor. So let's focus on the hard thing first, and then look at all the easy things later. All right, so in addition to those major tasks for Backdrop 1.2, we're also continually improving various other things. There's obviously a bunch of issues in the GitHub queue. In addition to the issues in our GitHub queue, since we're starting with Drupal 7, we also have all of the same issues that exist for Drupal 7. So as you guys are going through doing your daily work, whether that's Backdrop or Drupal, if you notice issues with the system, bugs, report them. If we don't have them already in our queue already, we want to know about them. If Drupal doesn't have them in their queue already, Drupal needs to know too. So my daily process usually involves working on a Drupal 7 site, finding a bug, posting the bug fix in the Drupal queue, going to Backdrop, confirming the bug exists, posting the bug fix in the Backdrop queue, hopefully trying to solve all the problems for everyone at once, which hopefully will move everyone forward together. Ideal case scenario, maybe not realistic for everyone. So issues that we're currently working on solving. User experience is super important to us over here in Backdrop land because long term we're going to be competing against people who are trying to figure out whether they should use Backdrop or WordPress. And WordPress has a super slick user experience, mostly because it's very simple in what it can do, which means when we're trying to compete with a more complicated product, we need to create user interfaces that are more intuitive than what we have today. So if we're going to be successful in competing against WordPress, we've got to improve our user experience. I know we have a whole bunch of issues in the queue already, getting momentum on adding things like a in-app module browser, a field UI redesign. There's some stuff that I know people are really passionate about and we've been working on already. So thank you everyone who's worked on those issues, and let's keep going in those directions. If you're interested in user experience in particular, you can put square bracket UX in the search field for issues on GitHub. You can see all of the issues we've already tagged as user experience issues and weigh in on those if you want to help there. Same thing is true for developer experience. We are trying to make code that most people will be able to learn how to use. And that means that we need to remove the stuff that is really weird and confusing as much as possible, or simplify or provide helper functions in ways that we can make it easier for people to get into the code. These things are obviously harder to do during the 1.x release cycle because we're trying not to change or break any APIs. But if we can solve problems by adding wrapper functions or helper functions in ways that don't change anything, but maybe just introduce a layer, like a compatibility layer with Drupal or something that makes things easier to use, we can definitely do that. So in our issue queue, we also have issues that are tagged with DX in square brackets that'll help make those get a little more attention. But again, we've got to be a little bit more careful with how to fix those. So if you guys are porting modules from Drupal 7 to Backdrop, if you're building sites, if you're writing custom modules, as you find things are weird, let us know. We will try and make them less weird and more intuitive. So it is Thursday. Every Thursday, we have a little mini sprint on Backdrop. We usually hang out in our IRC channel. Truth be told, we're usually there every day. But on Thursdays in particular, we tend to be more focused on Backdrop and less focused on everything else. So if you want to come and help with anything we're working on, or ask questions about what it is we're doing or how things may be different over here in Backdrop land, you can jump in our IRC channel. It is #Backdrop. There's a whole bunch of fun people in there who can help answer questions. And we usually work together on issues. So if you're working on stuff and you want feedback on what you've been doing, you can post links in there and get some feedback. It's also a good place to ask, like, hey, I'm new, where do I get started? what do you guys need help with, stuff like that's a great place to find us. If IRC is not your thing, we also have a subreddit, which is at reddit.com/r/backdrop. I somehow forget that every week. And that's a good kind of forum where if you maybe aren't requiring instant feedback, but you have a good question, ask it in there. There's lots of people watching that queue trying to make sure the questions get answered in a reasonable time. If there's nobody there who can answer your question, you can usually find someone who can somewhere else and get them to come back. So that's another good place to ask and answer questions. Also, you can tweet with hashtag Backdrop CMS. There's a whole bunch of people who are following that tag, and if you have questions, you can get answers that way if Twitter is your thing. We also have a Facebook presence, but it's not been super active. We're going to try and change that because I noticed we secretly somehow got a ton of Facebook followers, so I guess maybe we should be using that. So we'll try and improve that too, just to try and make it easier for people to be able to talk about, work with, and get questions answered for Backdrop. Every week we have a meeting at 1 p.m. Pacific on Thursday. That's this meeting that we're in right now, where we talk about the remaining development tasks for Backdrop. This list shrinks as we fix things and grows as we find new things that are higher priority. And it helps to kind of keep us focused on the things that we want to get done for the next major version of the software. So if you're interested in working on core, you can join this meeting. If you're interested in just seeing what it is that we are working on, you can also watch the video on YouTube. We do a live stream, and then it gets posted on our YouTube page for future, so that can be fun for you to join into. If development is not really your thing and you feel like you're more a design or user experience person, we also have a fortnightly meeting, which is right before this one this week. It will happen again in 2 weeks, where we talk about design tasks that we're working on for Backdrop. So Backdrop the software, as well as Backdrop the community. We have other things we need in terms of our primary website, our Twitter presence, just places where people who have design skills could be valuable to us. Also user experience skills. So if you watch one of those meetings, see something you want to do, you can tweet at us or join us in IRC or use the Reddit or however else you feel like getting in touch with the Backdrop community. Let us know what you want to work on and we'll try and help you get going. So yeah, well, definitely. However anyone wants to get involved, we will take it. Both those two meetings are on our Backdrop meeting calendar. When we have an iCal feed for that, if you're interested in that, I'm going to post it on our contribute page on the backdropcms.org website. We've had people ask about where those links are 4 or 5 times, and I think my response has been, oh, it's in our Google Doc for the meeting agenda, and it's on our subreddit, but both of those places are a little bit hard to find. So I'm just going to throw them up on our website and let people grab them there. And we also have a second calendar, which is for Backdrop-friendly events. This year, those events are entirely Drupal events. We're adding Drupal camps where people are giving talks on Backdrop, Drupal sprints where people are sprinting on Backdrop. Mostly it's all Drupal events because Backdrop and Drupal are still kind of the same community. Like Drupal 7 and Backdrop are kind of the same thing. Over time, that will change as people stop using Drupal 7 and start using Drupal 8. The differences between Drupal and Backdrop will get larger and larger as Backdrop moves forward in one direction and Drupal in another. And at that point, this calendar will start to contain Backdrop-specific events. Hopefully by that point, our community will be large enough to support those on its own, and we won't need these, combined events, but we'll see what people want. I mean, it could be that Backdrop and Drupal end up being friends and friendly forever. There's a couple events on the main calendar that are just kind of open sourcey events. So something that might include Ruby on Rails and WordPress and Backdrop and Drupal all together is also a good fit. So just events calendar, places where you can hear about Backdrop, generally speaking. Or speak about Backdrop. So if anyone wants to speak about Backdrop, we would love to have other people who are watching this video are curious about it, want to do a review and tell what you've learned. We would love to hear about where those things are going on, and we'd love to throw them on our calendar. So if you are speaking at a camp coming up, let us know. I know, Wes, you sent us an email last week about an event in Philadelphia, I think, where you're going to be speaking. That's on the calendar now. Anyone else has anything else you're working on? Let us know. Pittsburgh. Well, I got the state right. I guess that's pretty close. Yeah, sorry, my geography is not strong. So yeah, that's on the calendar. The calendar is open to any event. Eventually, we will have a way for people to submit their own events that'll maybe aggregate automatically into a calendar, but since right now it's just a Google Cal, just let us know, email info@backdropcms or tweet at backdropcms, just backdropcms, and we'll find it, we'll throw it on there. All right, so in terms of publicity, some of the upcoming events on our calendar include Drupal Camp Colorado, where I know there's at least one talk submitted on Backdrop. We're not sure yet whether it has been selected, but we can check on that when they get closer to selections. That is June 20th through 21st. There's Twin Cities Drupal Camp. Same thing there, session submitted, not sure if it's been selected. That is June 25th through 28th, so the weekend immediately after. Then we have Nerd Summit. This is the open source summit, which is September 11th through 13th. We are absolutely positively sure there will be lots of Backdrop at that event. I think Nate has been asked to be a keynote speaker for that. So we're on the schedule there. We're working out a new talk that we'll give for that one, so that should be really fun. And yeah, September 11th through 13th is also a big week for us because September 15th is the 1.2 release of Backdrop. So hopefully we'll have some pretty cool stuff to show off by that time too. All right, so in the section where should we add anything else to this weekly agenda, Nate has typed in project browser and project browser server. So Nate, do you want to take over and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so maybe I should have mentioned it during the update section, but I wanted to just tack it on at the end because it's an area that there seems to be a pretty good amount of enthusiasm around. Issue 870 in the Backdrop issue queue for Backdrop core itself, Doc Wilmot has been working along with a couple of other community members, Graham Oliver, and let's see, I guess mostly Graham, but a couple other people are really interested in it for sure. And that is the ability to install and find modules or themes from directly within core without needing to go and visit backdropcms.org, which has been an issue that they've been trying to get done in Drupal for a really, 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 really long time, like 4 or 5 years. But the great thing is that all of the code is written for Drupal 7 and it's pretty much all ready to go, but they're held up on some infrastructure issues around like the complexity of Drupal.org and the version of Drupal.org, because at one point they were running Drupal 6 and then they had to be upgraded to Drupal 7, and so there's been delay after delay getting that into Drupal. But for ourselves, with a lot smaller community and a lot simpler infrastructure, we have a great opportunity to implement that really in the very near future. So Doc Wilmot's been doing some amazing work getting those projects working, and I'm wondering if we should try to get that into the 1.2 release. You know, we've got essentially still 3.5 months before that release, and there's a really good chance that we could actually complete that within that time. But there's a bunch of other, you know, issues we're also trying to work on at the same time. I think maybe we should just decide whether or not that's a priority or not.
So do you want to discuss? I think it sounds amazing. I would love to get more user features, like more site builder features into the product. I think especially if we've got a whole bunch of people who are super passionate about it and working on it, there's no reason we should prevent something like that from going in. I know that's something that's been, you know, there's been a bunch of really active user experience enthusiasts in Drupal who are working on that for a really long time. And, you know, it's something Drupal community feels about strongly. I think it's something we should feel strongly about too.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of my feeling as well. Like, I'm going to do everything I can to facilitate the movement on that. I set up a dev server last night because right now backdropcms.org, we just had our local hosts and then the live site. But with more people getting involved on backdropcms.org, having a dev site, of course, is going to be beneficial to us. So that should be set up, and I'll get Doc Wilmot access to it so he can start experimenting with his project browser server module, which is the server-side component of the project browser module, which is what lives in core. Cool. Yeah. So we'll just keep facilitating that as much as possible. Whether or not it's a 1.2 target or not, I'm not really sure that it needs to be like a super high priority. But if it happens, then that's great.
Fantastic. All right. Well, is there anything else that we should either talk about every week now that 1.1 is out, or stuff that we should talk about this week? Questions, comments? Not really. Okay.
Okay.
Well, then it's probably time for us to get back to work. So I'm headed to IRC. I'll be there for a little while. I've got to make a couple of updates to a couple of things we're working on. But then I got to get on a plane today. So hopefully the rest of you will be able to make use of our little sprint day. But yeah, thank you all for joining the meeting, and we will talk to you next week.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.